we've had a steady increase in jobs since about 2010. But when we're looking at unemployment both since 2011 or so, for the overall population, which is the blue line at the bottom, versus the youth population is always higher, but they've been both going down at a sort of constant rate. And in 2017, they were both at their lowest. So youth unemployment was at about 12%, and then overall unemployment was below 6%. And so unemployment in 2018 remained about the same for the overall population, but youth unemployment actually went up quite a bit to 16%. So, and I think based on more recent numbers, we have the monthly labor force survey results, which aren't as accurate, but just kind of give us a picture. These are annualized, so they are more accurate. They kind of show that it's still the trend. So that gap between youth and overall unemployment is growing locally. This is in the Windsor CMA. So average tuition costs, so that's one of the main even me, I just graduated from university and paying off a student loan. This really matters, and in the Windsor CMA, we're seeing an average tuition cost of $7,609. By the way, the Windsor CMA includes Lakeshore, LaSalle, Amherstburg as well, and Tecumseh. But for Essex riding, it includes those three municipalities. So it's the average tuition in the region, basically locally, is lower than Ontario's, but higher than Canada's average tuition per year in 2019, 2020. So these are just a couple points on housing. This is something that has sort of sprung up on us in the region. I think it was in April, it was revealed that the highest annual increase for any one region in terms of house prices was experienced locally here. And it was 2 years, but it was 25%. And that was higher than any sort of comparable region in the province. And the proportion of young adults aged 20 to 34 living with their parents in Canada, Toronto's the highest at almost 50%, and Oshawa's the same, and then Hamilton and Windsor. Windsor is fourth on that list of number of youth that are still living with their parents at 44%. So that, I think those two kind of things are related, and it shows that housing is kind of a disproportionately important issue for youth. So we're seeing income. So total population, annual income, median income was $50,000, and then it was $25,000 for people between 15 and 24, and then $42,000 for 25 to 34, and that's for people who are working full time in the full year. So, but obviously a lot of that is explained by the fact that younger people have less experience, but it also shows that sort of issues that would be faced by low-income people might also be disproportionately affected by youth. And that's also encapsulated in this low-income measure. So the amount of people who are living in a low-income situation overall in the Windsor CMA is 17.5%, but for people below the age of 18, it's 24%, so almost a quarter. And then for people 18 to 24, it's 22%. So at least 5%, or about 4.5% higher than the average population. So it is disproportionately, low-income situations are disproportionately experienced by youth in our region. This is another sort of topic, is the amount of youth that are leaving our community compared to other age groups. So when you're looking at, so this blue bar indicates the number of people who left the region between 2011 and 16, and then the green is people who moved into the region. So we're seeing for the age group 55 and over. Oh, I think this has a laser, no? Where's the laser? Nice. Okay, so you can see for the older age groups, it's actually more people moving than leaving. So those age groups are doing good, and they see sort of opportunities here. But in terms of people below the age of 44, including people aged 15 to 24, there's more people leaving than coming in. When we're just looking at movement in the country. So that also sort of reflects what kind of opportunities are available for youth. Are they enough to keep youth in the community? And then this is one that Kelsey wanted me to talk about. So the amount of retirements that are being faced in manufacturing is above the age of 55. Sorry, the amount of people in manufacturing above the age of 55 is almost 20%. So it means that maybe in the next 10 years we're going to be seeing all those retirements. So how are we going to be preparing? Ensuring that youth will still be employed in sort of the most, major industry in our region. So that's all I kind of wanted to cover, just some sort of statistics to get us going. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope I didn't go too fast. I did want to be
We're both
brief.
known in the office, I think, for being the fast talkers. Alright. So the first thing that we're going to do on this piece here, can I have my clicker back?
Oh, sorry.
I know I'm right next to it, but it feels cool. Alright. So we thank the partners. The one thing that I wanted to draw to everybody's attention, so in the Essex riding, there are 17,017 youth that are eligible to vote in this election. I know many of those in the room today may not be 18 yet, but we're really looking forward to the time that you are, because seeing that you are already engaged is huge. Making sure that, whether it's older siblings or classmates or friends or coworkers, whoever it is that you're meeting with, having the opportunity to talk to them and encourage them to vote, and doing that one-on-one makes the largest difference. So having that conversation with those people closest to you and making sure that you're engaged is really contagious to all of those that you come in contact with. So we do have some questions. I was able to get a polling thing together. So has everybody been able to, whether or not logged onto the Wi-Fi, if you visit pollev.com/election2019, I'll give everybody just a minute to sign in. It'll give us an opportunity to just ask a few quick questions. You can barely tell there's a party on the other side of the petition. All right, how are we doing? So far, so good? Okay, so I'm going to pull up the first question. So this is just a test. We're going to see how we're doing here. So the first question should be, which do you prefer? Ooh, okay, all right. So we've got a couple for an ice cap, other, all right. I'm curious because I'm a nice coffee person myself. All right. Perfect. Okay, so for real this time. How old are you? And I know I'm really lucky today to be joined. So for those that don't know, I am lucky enough to be the Ward 3 counselor for the town of Lakeshore. I chair the Town of Lakeshore Youth Advisory Committee, and then of course have this organization as well. I'm lucky enough to be joined by 4 members of the Town of Lakeshore Youth Council. I know there's another former member of the TLYC in the room. We do have members, I think from Essex that are here today as well. I see Sherry in the back there, and Ava is a youth counselor, and Cameron as well. They're both here from the town of Essex, and they sit on council as youth council members. So this is a really great opportunity to see who's coming forward for municipal leadership. Moving forward, maybe bigger than municipal, I don't know, we'll see. But those that are really engaged in communities. So this is when it gets really funny. You can do this more than once. We're not just going to limit you to one word at a time. Well, you put in one word at a time, but what comes to mind when you think of election, or more specifically, this election that's coming forward? And please keep it clean. These words make me really happy, because I think the one thing that we hear, the one thing that I've heard is, well, you're young, you're too young to be jaded when it comes to politics. I think that's because youth aren't told no enough, so we come into things expecting more, expecting better. So when I see all of these things like forward to the future and voice, voting, represent, community, these are things that we can all bring to the table as youth, regardless of whether or not we're able to vote just yet, but things that we can communicate to our candidates and to our local officials that this is what needs to be addressed from our perspective. So issues is the big one. So I really hope we're gonna have some good questions today. All right. So the last thing that we're gonna ask before we get into some questions is ranking the issues that matter to you. So you'll have some arrows on your screen there that'll allow you to kind of move these things around. We have the environment, affordable housing, the creation of new jobs, cost of higher education, immigration, truth and reconciliation, and then other. Good, so we've got, I think by the end here, we're gonna have some cost of higher education as the first, environment, affordable housing, the creation of new jobs, other, immigration, and then truth and reconciliation. And just to kind of put this into perspective, so Winter Essex's vital signs report came out this week, and they actually did something really special. So for all of those that responded to the vital signs survey, they actually gave grades to all of the things that were included. But on top of that, they were able to give specific grades from the youth response, which is incredible. So this is how everything fared. So work got a C, health, wellness, and activity got a C in the region, housing got an F, which I think was across the board for most, and came up in your answers as well. Environment got a C, so we definitely need to be doing better, and getting around got a C as well. So just a few things to keep in mind as we move forward. So I really think we should get to it. I'm going to introduce the candidates for those of you who haven't had a chance to meet them yet. So to my left, we have Audrey Festeriga. She is the Liberal candidate for Essex. Tracey Ramsey, Jennifer Alderson from the Green Party, and Bill Capes from the People's Party of Canada. Of course, the elephant in the room that I will address is that we do not have the Conservative representative with us today. Though we made quite a few attempts to reach out to Chris and his team, he and his team decided that it was most important to be out knocking doors today. With that in mind, I will say that we will not be able to get, obviously, a full scope of where all candidates in the region land on things today, but I really hope that you're able to learn a lot, and this helps you make a more educated decision moving towards the October 21st election date for the advanced polling next weekend. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up because affordable housing is one issue that really sticks with me. So as Kobe mentioned, housing costs have risen about 25% in the last 2 years in this region, and more youth are living at home in this region than ever before. So how will you as candidates ensure that young Canadians have opportunities to buy or rent affordable housing in areas that they so choose? So we're going to start, Audrey's going to start us off. Everybody drew straws kind of to start off, and then we'll move down the table. I will ask candidates to keep things quite brief, no more than about 2 minutes a person, and then we'll open it up to the floor as well for additional questions. So, Audrey? Oh, if you would like, actually, yes, I do have that. I do apologize. I'm going to let the candidates do an opening and introduce themselves first. So I'll let Audrey start us off.
Sorry. Thank you. I was having a challenge with mics. Perfect. So thank you, Kelsey, and the Council Coalition of Canada for inviting me here today and for inviting the rest of the candidates here. As students, the young people of today and the young adults of tomorrow, you know that the decisions that you make today impact your future. We know that as well as the Liberal government. We know that you are the largest cohort that will be voting in this upcoming election. And we know that you're faced with many, many challenges. We're making tuition more affordable by increasing Canada's student grants again. That means an average of $4,200 each year that will be there for students to invest in their post-secondary education, because everyone should have an opportunity to have education. And we're also making life more affordable with a plan to lower cell phone bills, and we're taking climate action very, very seriously. We know that we have to invest in our future. That's what the Liberal government is doing. Our country is thriving. We have a low unemployment rate, although that's not reflected in our student unemployment rate, and we have a very strong economy. We can't afford to lose that momentum, though. We can't cut our way to prosperity, as Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives would have us believe, and we also can't rely on the NDP to be an effective voice for us in Ottawa. I'm a first-generation Canadian. I come from a family of very modest means. My parents, my mother and my father were both, one was a refugee and one was an immigrant coming to Canada. I spoke German when I went to school. I had to work so hard my entire life to afford to put food on the table. We were farmers and we worked very, very hard. I had to take student loans and I was lucky to get a few grants from my post-secondary education. As I said, I'm a farm girl, I'm a lawyer now. I'm no stranger to hard work. I'm a 5-year breast cancer survivor. The Run for the Cure was this morning. I've walked a mile in many shoes. I've also worked in long-term care. I'm a mother of 2 children. My son is 30 and my daughter is 27. I worked in a management role in a long-term care home, as I said. My way to lead is through collaboration. I work with the community to get things done. I listen to what you have to say, and then I roll up my sleeves and I'm ready to work on behalf of the residents of Essex. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for attending today, and I'd like your vote. And that's my
Hi everyone, my name is Tracey Ramsey. I'm going to be short but sweet because I really want to get to the topics. I'm excited to talk about affordable housing first off the top. I have been elected here as your Member of Parliament for the past 4 years, working very hard, being a voice in Ottawa, bringing Essex to the national stage. I've taken every opportunity that's been put in front of me to be able to discuss the issues that face us. I have an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, so certainly a lot of your concerns are things that I hear inside my own home, and the worries and the anxieties that you have about your future, and what that looks like, and what your jobs will look like, how we will protect our planet is incredibly important. But also I know that you see your parents and grandparents and the struggles that they face, and you're deeply concerned about them having a good life as well. So I'm super excited to see so many of you here. I know there are a lot of young people who couldn't make it today because they're working, because they're studying, because they have many other obligations in their life. So I'm happy to see the live streaming taking place, and I hope that some young folks will watch this after, and I hope that all of you will share it with your friends so that you can talk about the decision that you're going to make. I'm excited to see those stats. We have a great number of young people, and in Essex, your vote can make the difference. So your vote matters and counts an incredible great deal. And when I've been making decisions or debating or talking about policy up in Ottawa, I've always had a focus on how it will impact the generations behind us. Indigenous peoples, look at the 7 generations behind us, and I think that that principle serves everyone well, because it means that we're not just making decisions for ourselves today, what's best for us, but for everyone who will come generations behind. So I thank you for your time, and I'm excited to get going on the debate.
So my name is Jennifer Alderson. I'm the Green Party candidate for the Essex riding. I am a wife, mother to an 8-year-old daughter. As well, I work in human resources on a full-time basis. I also teach cooking classes here at the Atlas Tube Center on a part-time basis to children and adults. Very active in many committees throughout the town. Very active in the community. I started the farmers market out here as well. So I'm very much involved in volunteering and very much involved in many issues that a lot of us face. Through my job in human resources, I see how hard it is for young people to get full-time employment, that is on a temporary basis. I have eliminated all ties with staffing agencies and where I work and where I previously worked to ensure that young people can get jobs, direct hire, good employment without having to go through agencies where they're constantly, going to different places to work, not finding that full-time, meaningful work that should be offered to them. In many ways, we have issues here with the environment, much like the rest of the world. those are things I'd like to focus on, and with the Green Party as well. Affordable housing, guaranteed livable income, as well, many other things that go hand in hand with the environment. So thanks so much for having me here today. I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate being able to speak with you all.
My name is Bill Capes. I'm here with the People's Party of Canada. I'm a long-term resident here of our area, born and bred here. I've been a skilled trades employee since I got out of high school, and be aware the trades are in desperate need of young talent with a lot to offer. Don't hesitate to investigate the trades here in our local area. It's going to be an oncoming need that's only going to grow.
Wonderful, thank you, welcome, and thank you very much for attending. We do really appreciate it. So I guess I'll go back to, I'll just reread the question there for everybody. So with the rise in housing costs, the lack of rental housing being constructed as well in the region and across the country, what will you and your party do to ensure that young Canadians have opportunities to buy or rent in areas and towns they call home? I get to go first. Yes. Okay.
So affordability is definitely one of the things that the Liberal government has taken very seriously. The platform in 2015 called for taxing the wealthiest an extra 1% and distributing that further on down, which included then the Canada Child Benefit and so forth. We've had Adam Vaughan, who is in Toronto, and he was a real champion of the homeless and building affordable housing and a national home strategy. The 2019 platform builds on the work that Adam had done, and what we're doing is we're definitely making it easier for first-time home buyers to buy a new home, with changes to the stress test and with an opportunity to have funds provided to families. What we are looking to do is, sorry, I'm going to do this off the top of my head. What we are going to be doing is making it much easier for families and young people, first-time home buyers, to access funds with guarantees from the central banks and from the government to assist with the down payment and the length of time that you're allowed to pay back your loans. There are other factors as well, reducing income taxes payable. The first $15,000 will be federally tax-free, tax-exempt, and that will help put more money in your pocket. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has indicated that for the most part, Canadian families are $2,000 ahead in their pocket, and so that's another area that we're trying to make it more affordable for first-time home buyers to purchase.
Thank you. Tracey?
Affordable housing is such a key issue here in Essex County. We are facing a crisis in affordable housing. And if you look back, we used to fund affordable housing across our country. Many of us see wartime homes. Many of the parents in the room will know what those are. I'm hoping that the young people do too. They were homes that were built after World War II. After World War II, we built 300,000 affordable homes in 2 years. And we did so because there was a recognition from the government at the time that if people had a roof over their heads, they would do better. They could find a job, they could build their life following the war, and it was one of the greatest initiatives that we've had in our country to ensuring that everyone has a roof over their head. Now, if we fast forward to the Mulroney government, they cut all funding for affordable housing, completely cut it off. And successive federal, Liberal, and Conservative governments have not done anything to address the fact that we used to have a funding stream that doesn't exist. We have 2 provinces that picked that up, and that's Quebec and BC. So Ontario did not, and that's why we're in the crisis that we're in. There are some concrete things that we can do. We can offer incentives for builders when they're building new units to have affordable housing within those units. There are also things we can do for first-time home buyers. And I recognize that for a lot of young people, this landscape has changed. When I first started working and was able to get a job that was paying well, I knew that I was moving towards buying a home. There was an affordable entry point to purchasing a home. that doesn't exist. We have the bubble that's come down from Toronto, and there's a couple of reasons for that. We have our real estate market in Canada being used like a stock market by foreign investors. We need to crack down on that and stop that. That's something that we can do, and the province of BC is leading the way right now. So we need to address the cost. The other thing that we can do is we can provide a rental subsidy of up to $5,000 per year for people who are struggling to pay their rent. Now, when you hear the term affordable housing, a lot of people think, what does that mean? If you're paying 30% or more of your take-home pay on your home and your utilities, then you are not in an affordable housing situation. And that can be a lot of people who own their own home. We often hear the term house poor. So people own their home, a lot of seniors, but they can't afford the medication that they need. They can't afford to have a vehicle anymore. They can't afford, groceries, quite honestly. We see an increase in people accessing food banks. So we need to have affordable options, and there are some things we can do about the cost of homes and entering into. We'd like to see CMHC first-time homebuyers return to 30 years. So that young people can have that opportunity, and also to double the first-time home buyer tax credit. So there's a lot of things that we can do, but this has to be a holistic approach. This is a big, big issue facing many Canadians, and it certainly has impacted people here in Essex. And NDP government is committed to finding solutions.
So in terms of affordable housing, I don't want to dwell on past issues with government. With the Green Party, we're looking to move forward to correct what's done and to make the future sustainable for us all. So really, most importantly, what we need to do is legislate a policy so that all people are protected and all people have a right, a fundamental human right to affordable, safe housing, which is probably the most important thing. To feel safe, you need a safe place to live. Very important to us. So through this, appointing a Minister of Housing to strengthen the national housing strategy so that new units are built, so that units can be rented as well as homes can be built in an affordable means. We would like to provide grants, which would be dependent on the city, dependent on the region, so that people can afford housing in higher cost areas like Vancouver, Toronto, but can also afford areas in lower cost areas, northern areas, to increase the fact that people can afford where they're living and not be house poor. In many ways, this also goes to retrofitting existing places. There's many places that could be rented out but are either not safe or not sustainable in terms of energy. So we would like to work towards retrofitting many of the places that are here now, making them safe and also making them sustainable in terms of energy use. So just some of our ideas to keep the area growing, prospering for people of all ages. Thank you. Bill?
Affordable housing in our area is a problem. There's no question about that. It's going to continue to be a problem in the short term. It is a cyclical issue. Our planning is, in my opinion, lagging the demand for housing here. We have been known as being the most affordable region in Canada to live in for quite some time. Unfortunately, there are people out there that have clued into that scenario, and they've sold properties in the high market areas, and they now come here and they can outbid pretty much any local people for properties that they desire without any real problem. They have money in their pocket to spend. So there has to be another approach for our local people that are historically from our own local labor markets here. You're never going to outbid someone that's sold a property for millions of dollars in Toronto or Vancouver. That's just a difficult problem to solve. So one way we can help people that are struggling with their housing right now is to control peripheral costs, insurance costs, food costs, energy costs through unknown costing going forward here with carbon costing and so on being undetermined in the near future. there's a lot of unknowns going on right now with our monthly bills, and that needs to be looked at. We also need to invest more money into our rural areas. We need to improve the basic infrastructure there, internet, for example, natural gas. Let people live in the smaller communities instead of being forced to gravitate into the larger cities for jobs and someplace to live. That's, like the cost of things in general have been going up at such a fantastic rate. It's likely that we need to open a discussion regarding cost versus length of time to pay. So I would agree with the other parties in that particular aspect. It's a dynamic market, it's changing very quickly. Immigration levels and the cost of living here that's been historically low in our region is doubling down on the housing problems here, and it's probably not going to go away with a magic bullet anytime soon.
Okay, so I'm going to thank the candidates for the answers. Being this is the first one, I'm going to let everybody get their answers out, and then I'll go through and kind of moderate little bits afterwards. So for those that don't know, and I guess I'll start with Audrey here, so the Liberal Party, just before the rate dropped actually, or before September, announced that they would have a first-time home buyers plan. The one question I do have about that is that being that it's 5% for an existing build towards the down payment and 10% towards a new construction, my question is, one, how is that going to be funded? And two, what are the plans what other plans does the Liberal Party have to fund new development as opposed to letting these prices continue to skyrocket so that we continue to have to borrow money from the government?
So, as everybody has said, affordable housing is key critical for safety, security, for health, the whole 9 yards. And I should have written down all of your questions because they're very all-encompassing. So, as you know, the Liberal government is very, very invested in the middle class and in making sure that people have an opportunity to get ahead. The middle class gets ahead. We are looking at taxing the wealthiest, 1%, which will enhance some of our revenues. We're also looking to increase jobs, which will also enhance revenues. So the funding aspect is one of those issues that we take seriously, but we think it's more important to continue to ensure that people have an opportunity to get ahead. So, so to answer the question about the affordability aspect, we are running deficits, there's no question about that. But because interest rates are so low right now, that's not, from our perspective, not a crisis. And I'm sorry, you'll have to repeat the rest of the question.
Okay, so the next part of the question was really, so what we can do then, should the Liberal government continue for the next 4 years, would be to borrow money from the government at either 5 or 10%. My concern then, as a young person looking to buy a home, would be, well, why would these prices continue to skyrocket? So then that price that we're borrowing from the government, the 5 or the 10%, continues to grow. So we continue to need more money from the government, increasing the deficit and putting that burden on other taxpayers.
House prices, though, also continue to grow, so your investment will continue to grow. So getting into the market and getting into a realistic price home to start with is the leg up that you need to start on your path to home ownership and continue on.
Thank you. I would just like to ask if any of the other parties have anything that they would like to add to that. Yeah, Tracey.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to get to the root of the problem. Why are the costs so high? Right? What is happening? We've been watching it happen in Vancouver, happening in Toronto, and now it's crept down here, and you saw the stats about how it's increasing. In Canada, our real estate market is being used for money laundering. There are criminal activities that are being used in purchasing units, and mind you, this is happening largely in the big cities, in Vancouver, in Toronto and Montreal, but we know this is happening. So we need the government to have the courage to crack down on this. The other thing in BC that they implemented is a foreign owner, basically a tax. So purchase property here in Canada and you are not a Canadian, there should be a tax that you pay in order to do that. Because the foreign ownership is driving the cost up, and that's why the bubble is now coming down to us here.
Tracy,
So-
can I interrupt for just one second? When you say not a Canadian, do you mean those without official status in Canada or not living residents in Canada?
No, I'm saying like if you are someone who lives in China and you would like to purchase a home in Canada, then there should be a foreign tax that you're paying to do so. And this is what they implemented in BC because the home ownership in BC is largely foreign. So there has to be a way to address this. We want, of course, to encourage people to come to our country to purchase property, to live. We want immigration. All of those things are positive. But when our real estate market is being used like the stock market, which is speculative, and they're never actually coming and living here, but purchasing, flipping, trading, kicking people out of affordable units so they can renovate and then charge higher costs. And I'll tell you a concrete example. I was in Kingsville canvassing. We came across an older duplex in the heart of town. The last time that I've been canvassing there were some folks that were living that were in an affordable housing situation, were being supplemented. They have now lost that home. Someone bought this home last year for $90,000. They flipped it for $213,000 6 months ago, and the new owners are completely renovating it. So the rents that are going to now happen inside of this unit are going to be unaffordable for people who are in a housing challenge. So this is a renoviction thing that we're facing, and I hear this all across the county. I met a woman in Windsor at the Welcome Center shelter who lives in Amherstburg, who lost her home, who could not afford her rent anymore, and went to go find another unit, and there were none available because there were so many that were sitting empty that landlords were in the process of renovating so they could increase the cost. This woman was crying because she's from a small town. I grew up in a small town. I live in a small town, and she didn't want to leave. Her support system was in Amherstburg. She didn't want to end up homeless and in the city. But this is what's happening to the most vulnerable in our society. And we have to address the housing from top to bottom and all of these people that are impacted.
Did anybody else have, Jen?
So I'd just like to add to another aspect of this being allowing the government and not having that stigma on providing affordable housing. There's been affordable housing proposed in this area, and I was really sickened to see on social media people talking about, I don't want that in my neighborhood, I don't want townhouses in my neighborhood. I was actually really saddened by that. So I'd like to see more affordable housing out in the county here so that people can actually afford to live. We have students who can live here, and that kind of ties into having a transportation system where these students can actually also get to school and get to work from the county, so that we can have areas here where there isn't much of a population. We can definitely grow that and then grow the infrastructure around that, creating jobs all in the process.
Bill, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure. Well, again, we're having issues. Most people, for whatever reason, feel they need to live in, for example, Windsor. Windsor has a terrible housing problem, as well as a lot of areas here in Lakeshore are having the same problem. We have transportation issues here in the county. We have employers in Harrow, for example, are high density employers, but yet there's nowhere for the employees to live in Harrow. We've closed the school in Harrow because we don't have enough population density to support it. That's crazy. We should be building housing in our rural areas or improving the infrastructure within the rural areas to help spread the population density across the area a little better, and that would help a great deal with affordability. Infrastructure such as sewage and water treatment and so on and so forth needs to be spread out in a reasonable way, and we have to be able to plan for it. And city councils and municipal councils and the provincial areas have to be able to plan for our housing issues.
Bill, can I just interrupt for just a second? I just wonder whether or not the PPC has a plan to immediately address some of these issues, whether in rural or in cities, because I do agree that they do have to work in tandem, right? If the entire region, the city of Windsor, and then whether it's Windsor West, Windsor Tecumseh, and the Essex riding in this region, all have the same problem to address, I'm just wondering if the PPC has an actual concrete plan to address this.
Well, the problem with housing is it's not a federal problem in any way, shape, or form. That's a simple fact. It's it's provincial through the Canadian Constitution. That's how it's done. So the main thing that we see is a large problem with the housing market now, as Tracey pointed out, it has become like the stock market. There's very little trajectory for investment money to go anywhere outside of either stocks or into rental housing or home ownership. If we had a broader based economy, like we historically have had, this low income economy that we have is creating high risk for people with money to invest, and it's come down to housing issues because they are driving prices beyond the affordability of the average person. That's the way it is, and a better, stronger, greater economy would be the best solution right off the top.
So no immediate answer. Tracey, I know that you had you kind of piped up there. Did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, housing is absolutely a federal jurisdiction. There is housing all throughout the federal thread. Certainly it's a partnership with provinces, but most definitely there's a federal responsibility, and we have an affordable housing strategy we're working on at the federal level. There has been a lot of conversations happening about the amount of spending. I can tell you that there's spending at the federal level on affordable housing, so that is not true. There is a responsibility there. And one of the things I could say too, so there's some councillors that are in the room. I see Sherry Bondi from Essex. I see John Kerr over here from Bell River, Lakeshore. So adding to Kelsey, of course. But there's a municipal aspect, and I know that this is a hot topic amongst our municipal councils when people are coming with new builds, talking about a percentage in there, looking at the way that we can make affordable housing units integrated into our communities so that, like Jennifer said, there isn't the stigmatization that exists unfortunately out in a lot of the communities. So I know that this requires all levels of government to be at the table and working together for solutions.
And I was just going to add, there is a national housing strategy, and CMHC is part and parcel of all of that. So yeah, I echo Tracey's comments that yes, there is definitely a national strategy.
Transferring tax dollars from the federal into the provincial is not a strategy. That's just the way it's currently done. In the end of the day, it's the provinces that determine the builds. The province of Ontario is currently building 10,000 units per year, and builders are of the opinion that that would eventually overcome the housing problem that we're having. But in the short term, it's going to be problematic. There's no question. It comes down to affordability, dollars and cents. It's tough.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave this question here because I know that there are many youth in the room that have their own questions that they would like to ask. So we have not screened these questions ahead of time. So the candidates really don't know what everybody else in the room is going to be asking. I would ask, though, that as you go up to the mic, you only ask one question. Please give us your name, where you live, maybe your age, so that we get a better idea of things, and keep to one question. You can choose to direct your question to one candidate or to the entire panel. It's your choice, and we'll move from there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mason, 27 from Lakeshore. My question is about the federal deficit and debt. Being a 27-year-old who has a job, I'm worried that right now the federal government has, I believe, $600 billion in debt, which is, it works with like $20,000 per person, and it's certainly not this generation that's paying it back, it's our generation. So how, with all your spending process, how do you plan to balance the budget and pay back the debt so that my generation is not saddled with the bills for things that are spent on the current and previous generation?
Well, the Canadian economy is very strong and it is growing. And we have a steadily declining debt relative to the size of our economy. Canada, as you know, has the best balance sheet in the G7. In fact, we're the envy of the G7. Our net debt to GDP ratio is less than half of the EU average and is less than a third of where the United States is just right now. So that is really relatively low level of debt. And that gives us a competitive advantage. Our government is fully committed to maintaining that advantage in an increasingly volatile and unpredictable world. Employment is the way that we will continue to be strong. Innovation is what we need to do. We have to develop jobs within the innovative sector. I know that, or I presume that there will be a question on climate change and green energy, but the jobs of the future are in green energy, and that's the way to stimulate the economy, and that will keep us strong.
This is such a good question, and I hear a lot of anxiety from young folks about how we're going to get out of the deficit that we're in. There is absolutely a way to do it. It's about tax fairness. It's about ensuring that corporations are paying their fair share in Canada. We have a wealth tax on people who have $20 million or more in wealth. It's 1%. That's reasonable enough to keep folks in the country, but to ensure that they're paying more of their fair share. That would generate $70 billion in revenues, and that's by the PBO. That's an independent study that was done. We have to talk about offshoring money in Canada. We've become known for this practice to the point that now they're calling it snow washing in Canada. We have to end this practice. We need people to pay their taxes here in Canada fairly, and it is unfair when citizens could never get away with not paying their taxes. And I can promise you, we have a lot of folks come into our office who have CRA cases. If you owe CRA a small amount of money or you make a mistake, they will come after you. But corporations are able to walk out of our country and not pay their fair share. And what's happening is the tax burden is being driven down on working people. We need to rebalance, and our tax system is over 100 years old. It's a patchwork system. We've called for a comprehensive tax overhaul. We need the entire system to be regenerated, and we can gain revenue in our country. Stock option tax loopholes. This is another way that we can end this practice. And I know a lot of us in the room know what just happened at NEMAC, talking about jobs that left our community that received investment from the municipal, the provincial, and the federal government. They received investment from the federal government with zero strings attached. That has to end. That's not responsible. That's not a proper way to use our money. If we want to invest in jobs, that's a legitimate thing to do, an important thing to do, because they generate taxes back into our economy. But let's start saying to a corporation, if you need some support, we will help you, but you need jobs that are going to stay in our community. We need a commitment on the term that those jobs will be there, a commitment that you will pursue and be a full partner in new investment in that facility. There's so much that we can do to repatriate some of the money that's going offshore, but certainly gain revenue in our country and not from those who are already feeling the most burden.
So to kind of highlight some of those same issues, offshoring, huge issue here, as well as corporations paying currently a tax of 15% in Canada, however paying 21% in the US. The Green Party would like to be in line with the US with a 20% tax, which I feel, and I'm sure many people involved in business would feel, this isn't going to take jobs away from Canada and move them to the US because we still have a great healthcare system here, which is costing businesses less money to operate in Canada. This also goes hand in hand with making sure everyone is trained properly so that jobs are not elusive to young people or older people, so people are retrained to do jobs. Moving to a green economy means some of the jobs that we're losing market share or losing strength here being, in greenhouse gas emissions like coal burning and other types of unsustainable practices. Moving to more green economy jobs will bring in also people from other countries, bringing in people who have the skill set, who could do the jobs that we have here, and training those younger people here to also move into the new green economy. So really just taxing the wealthiest people, taxing the corporations, and training those who want to do the work, and making it so it's affordable for them to live.
Okay, everyone's talking about taxing the wealthy. I don't know who the wealthy are, but if you tax people that can afford to leave, including corporations, as you can see through NEMAC and others, they will leave. And the jobs that are available through those employers leave with them. So you can talk about fairness all you wish, but we need those jobs here. The biggest problem we have is they're international players within our national market, and they do have access to opportunity to build and do what they do elsewhere if things aren't conducive here. Our plan is to eliminate wasted money, eliminate money spent elsewhere in Canada through anything except humanitarian aid. We will balance the budget in the first 2 years. After that, taxes will be lowered, both personal, business, and farm. Kickstart the economy. Get everything going here. We do not believe in corporate welfare in any way, shape, or form. We agree with Tracey on that, absolutely. Businesses need to come here. They need to be working here on a fair basis. There's no question about that. But balanced budgets and a vision to the future needs to be understood. If you're a business here and you wish to invest big money in our economy, you need to have a vision 5 to 10 years out of what you can anticipate the governmental and the environmental regulations are going to be. Currently in Canada, we don't have that clarity, and investment money is suffering for it. As far as green jobs go and the green environment, it's all good except for the toxic time bomb that also comes with it. People very rarely talk about the heavy metal problems we have with solar panels, and there needs to be a much wider, greater discussion upon that before we jump too far into the green economy.
I just want to.
Yeah, I'm seeing some extra mics come up, so I'm going to let the comments go through. I would like to make sure that everybody's still circling back to Mason's question about the burden that will be likely passed down to young Canadians as we move forward. I understand that, you know, with more population, that $20,000 is spread out among more people, but the debt or the deficit can stay the same. I know that there are questions about running the deficit and investment versus trying to balance the books in 2 years. When I hear things like that, I think that there are many Ontarians that could agree that we just experienced some of those promises, and we're seeing cuts and, you know, strike coming on Monday to education. So we know that trying to balance the budget and the likely cuts that come along with that to services end up being some of those that Canadians, when they're voting, did not vote to see happen. So I'll let Audrey start off again here.
So I will get back to the whole Doug Ford piece, but I just wanted to clarify as well. With the NEMAC situation, that situation with the investments and the corporate handouts that NEMAC received, that was under the Stephen Harper government. And yes, the arrangements there were pretty much a blank check. Since that time, since 2015 when the Liberals came in, we now have a new style of negotiating, and any dollars that are handed to corporations for innovation require jobs to stay here and require jobs to be part and parcel of the package. But more importantly, that the innovation and technology stay here, so that, like what NEMAC is trying to do and take all of that to Mexico, will not happen. As to the whole Doug Ford piece, you can't cut your way to prosperity, I guess is the bottom line message. I know Doug Ford said we aren't going to cut any jobs, we aren't going to lose anything in Ontario, and it's all going to be a very rosy picture. But the bottom line is you can't cut your way to prosperity, and that is the only way that Doug Ford is going to be able to balance his budget. And we're seeing that with the support workers in the education system. We're seeing it in healthcare. We certainly saw it with the autism file, and who had to step in to help out was the Liberal government with a program for autistic children. We can't go down that slippery slope, and that's not what the Liberals are going to be doing.
Does anybody have anything they want to add?
I would just add that Natalie Baines was here in 2017, the Liberal minister, awarding funding. So there was funding that was given at NEMAC. I just want to correct that, and that's something that anyone can look up if they wish. And I would just like to say that we have to start holding corporations accountable. We have to make sure that we have a fair taxation system in this country, and that will lead to economic prosperity. We need investments in our country, not cuts. The Doug Ford cuts are devastating, and many of you were discussing them with me out in the hall earlier, and they're going to have an impact on the lives of young people. And reversing the cuts are going to be very difficult. And the only reason I mention that, and it's unfortunate that the Conservative isn't here today, because I believe that this is the path that the Conservatives are heading federally. And it's not just myself who believes this. There are a lot of people that I'm talking to at the door who are deeply concerned about cuts that would happen at the federal level that would push the provincial cuts even deeper.
So I think we're going to move on. I'll ask the gentleman sitting in the front, or the lady. Oh, sorry, we've got one coming up to the mic. Will be. I'm going to be a little bit more careful with the time on this one, just to get everybody moving forward so we can get as many questions as possible. Go ahead.
So all of us in Windsor and Essex County know someone who's worked at Chrysler, Ford, and previously GM. Since the recession of 2008, we've seen time and time again the loss of these good-paying, unionized jobs that provide health care and pensions for workers, something that is mostly unheard of in this day and age. My father, brother, and I all work at Chrysler's, and we all work on the midnight shift. When we were like many people in Windsor and Essex County, we were devastated of the news that we are losing the third shift at Windsor Assembly Plant. That means that 1,700 new hires will be laid off at Chrysler, not to mention the thousands of workers from our feeder plants as well. My question to all candidates is, what are you and your party plan on doing to keep these good-paying unionized jobs here in Canada?
I think if I can add to that too, you might know my sister because she's on midnights at Chrysler, as are several of my cousins, and I have many family members that work at the plant. And what Uli had brought up earlier, that stat about almost 1 in 5 people in manufacturing is over the age of 55. So when we see those numbers, what I think is, oh cool, we'll have some retirements. I don't want to see the cut happen. We want to make sure that people are ready to move into retirement at a reasonable age. So instead of making sure that these seniors have to stay in their jobs because they can't afford living, and then we don't see them take, buyouts, if that is the case, which we don't want that to be. But then what happens to those youth? They get pushed out of those jobs, and seniors should reasonably be able to afford to retire as well and make room for the next generation. If you'll let me have that.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
So it is a very, very serious issue, and the Liberals are of the opinion that the key to success in our region is economic development. We're hearing that from the mayors as well. That means attracting and supporting new types of jobs. It means supporting innovation, training our existing workforce for the jobs of today and the jobs of the future. We need to look at innovation. We have to have an entrepreneurial culture, make sure our young people have the skills that they need to do the new jobs. We live in Essex County. It's an incredible place to live and work. We have manufacturing of many different kinds here, including green energy, green technology. We also have the agri-food industry. Food processing is a huge, huge employer, and so that's another aspect that needs support and needs new markets. That's where our NAFTA negotiations open new borders, open new opportunities for our product to reach new markets. Supporting industries which have a critical mass in investing new investment is also key critical. So the auto sector, it has to innovate, it has to advance. We know that AI is one of the driving factors for reducing our human employment. We need to, again, teach our young people the skills so that they can work in these new jobs.
So I think, Tracey, if I can, just before you start, because something that I was fortunate enough to, we had Manufacturing Day on Friday in Windsor, Essex County. Over 1,000 students from across the region were able to go through tours of manufacturing facilities across the area. So I was lucky enough to do one here and in Lakeshore, and then one out at Leamington as well. And what I really noticed when we talk about manufacturing and Windsor Essex being so strong in the auto industry is that these jobs are here now and we're about to lose them if we lose the third shift at the end of December. But what I hear when I go to these manufacturing facilities is we're working on 2023's version of the F-150 gas tank. So when we know that the auto industry is already working that far ahead, we don't have room to catch up right now. So I would be hard pressed to believe that should a government come in and push innovation, we would be able to see that difference being made in green energy or in new innovation in the auto sector. So until such time that those policies could be implemented, if they choose to be implemented by the party that assumes majority or minority power, my question is, what are we doing to protect the jobs we do have before we get to that point of inevitable innovation?
Thank you, Kelsey. It's such a good question. And my son Max, who's 18, went through that day, and he's pursuing a trade. He's now a Cavalier tool in an apprenticeship there. So there are a lot of opportunities that exist for young people. We know that. But getting back to the auto is more a larger picture. So I'm an auto worker. I worked 20 years at Ford. I walked off the line into the House of Commons. I'm on a leave of absence technically from there. So for me, this is deeply personal. In the economic downturn in 2008, I was laid off from my job. I had a young family. My husband also works in the auto sector, and I had to go back and retrain. And I know what type of an opportunity training can provide for people. We need to expand that. We need to allow for training opportunities for folks that want to transition. And to Kelsey's point, there has to be a transition that is just for working people and for young people in our country. We can't go off a cliff. It has to be this period of time where we finish out the cycle we're in and move to where we need to go and where we all need to go, and that is towards the green manufacturing. We manufacture things here. We're very, very good at it. Regardless of what we're manufacturing, we have a lot of expertise. So we have a unique opportunity to capture the opportunities in the green manufacturing of the future. This is something that we have to make sure that we're not only providing funds for innovation, but then providing the opportunity to scale up. What happens with innovation, we have wonderful innovation in our country, but people patent in the US, take those technologies and leave our country. That's a significant issue that we need to address as well. Getting back to auto, so it's not just here that we're facing it. Oshawa, everyone's been watching what's happening. We have NEMAC, we just lost a shift at Essex engine plant, and now we're facing the threat of losing a shift at FCA. This means over 10,000 jobs within the span of 3 months. This is going to devastate a lot of our communities, and we need a government who's at the table. The top thing we can do is have an auto manufacturing strategy. For some reason, successive governments have refused to do this, even though in Windsor, Essex, everyone from our Chamber of Commerce, our Windsor District Labour Council, Unifor, everyone is calling for this, parts all the way through the supply chain. Without a strategy, we're kind of left piecing all these things together and hoping for the best result at the end of the day. We need to put all of this together under one hub, and we are dedicated to doing that. The last thing I want to say, because it's been my critic portfolio, I have to talk about trade. And when we talk about trade agreements, they have not been fair to working people. Working people are an afterthought in trade agreements, and that's why we've suffered so greatly in our region. Under the original NAFTA, we bled 400,000 jobs out of manufacturing in our country. That eroded that base of good jobs where people could sustain their families. And I will tell you that it was very disappointing to have the Liberal government, along with the Conservative support, sign us onto the Trans-Pacific Partnership that we all know threatens 58,000 manufacturing jobs in our country. We had representatives from Tool and Die, the Chamber of Commerce, Labour, everyone up in Ottawa begging the government not to do it, and they would not listen. So we have, unfortunately, had governments that put ourselves in positions where it's easy for companies to say, we're going to move to a country where there aren't good labor standards, there aren't environmental standards, there's no health and safety, and people are discriminated against. That's unacceptable, and it has to stop.
So with the automotive industry in this area, obviously, this area has its roots in automotive, in manufacturing. We have to find ways to, one, diversify the economy, so we're not just tied to automotive, but manufacturing. We have people here skilled in manufacturing, but could offer their support to many other industries of manufacturing. We also have the ability to bring in auto manufacturers outside from the big three. There's no reason we can't attract business from more foreign automotive industries that are going to offer good paying jobs here. Like we have Honda manufactured not far away. We have other auto manufacturers that are manufacturing vehicles in the States, like Hyundai, Tesla. There's so many manufacturers that would be happy to come to this area if we were to attract them, to bring them here, where we can then be able to move some people who've been displaced from Chrysler, Ford, and GM. We also need to be able to offer retraining to those who are not going to have work in automotive anymore, to be able to retrain in skilled trades, in agriculture, in service sectors. There's so many other sectors in this area that need to grow to support the people who've just been displaced from losing automotive jobs. As much as we love to protect the jobs we have here, we have to think of diversifying our economy to have jobs in varied sectors, so that we're not just tied to one actual industry here.
Okay, specifically to your question, I feel the biggest problem we have right now with the large manufacturers leaving our region, that includes Fort Oakville, I believe, is leaving. The biggest problem we're having currently is we don't have clarity within our economy and within our government structure right now to enable people with big money to invest to see a path forward for security of their investments here in Ontario. It's a big problem. Michigan has stepped up their game for manufacturing through the Manufacturing Alliance, where they're using big government grants to offset anybody who wishes to set up shop in Michigan. The NAFTA agreement we just went through, that's likely to never ever happen because it's caught up in the U.S. Congress. It did very little to protect what's very important to some of the tool shops here in our region is intellectual property. Did very little to protect that on a Canadian end of it. People here are very research and development impacted by the big three. The big three has transferred intellectual demands upon the tool shops here for design and engineering. We have a huge and very, very profitable area of expertise within engineering and design here. And I'm not talking union jobs. Every small little tool shop here has a staff of engineering and design that's world class. These people and their efforts are not very well protected here, and they're very portable. So I've been told specifically that this election will determine some people's business models going into the near future, and they anticipate that some of the mid-level tool shops here will be moving their business into Michigan as a result of some of the agreements that were expressed to them through NAFTA. And as Tracey said, they were not well represented, and they were very upset by that. Beyond that, if you want to have a national auto strategy, stop bringing international companies here, companies in here. We are a country now of 37 million people, and we have every resource available to build cars or anything else we so see fit. We need government to sit down and debate whether or not we want to move to the next step and become more self-sufficient in this country. We are beholden to too many people, and our general economy suffers, and our people are losing the vision that they have for an economic future here. This is a discussion we need to have. It's not for any one party to sit down and determine it, but it's something that needs to be done. Are we going to move to the next stage in our development here as a country? I think we should, and I think we can. And I think inevitably we will, because we will have no choice to do so. We have to start to take care of ourselves here in Canada, and we need to do it soon.
Can I just pick up on a couple of things? Tracey is talking about a national auto strategy. The Liberals are looking at something a little bit stronger than a national auto strategy. We're looking at a national a manufacturing strategy. The bigger picture, not just a small sector being, not that the auto sector is a small sector, but the bigger picture. Additionally, we are looking at zero emissions for vehicles by 2050, with strong targets for 2030 and 2025. One of the things that the Liberal government did was the green energy rebate. Again, it's an attempt to help Canadians purchase hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles, and there would be incentives then to create those vehicles here in Canada. In particular, I'm very pleased that the Chrysler Pacifica attracted the green energy rebate. And I know there was an awful lot of parties who were very interested in getting that green energy rebate on the Pacifica. I do want to highlight, I did have something to do with that. I know that the vehicle was far too expensive for the program that was initially set up. We didn't have a voice at the table from this region with the government to really strongly advocate for that. Yes, there were lots of letters written.
So that's why
Yes,
they left it
there were.
out, because there wasn't a voice, they didn't include it?
No, because it was less expensive.
The only
It
Canadian
wasn't,
manufactured vehicle.
right, but it was a bit too expensive a vehicle for the program.
But you're saying it was left out because a Liberal wasn't sitting down there?
I'm saying that it was important to have an effective voice. I spoke with the Prime Minister on the
Which is why it
Wednesday,
was reversed in a very short period of time, because we stood
and then I
with
spoke
workers in
with,
Chrysler in the back of a pickup truck, and those workers fought, and they were successful, and I congratulate them.
and absolutely, there were a whole lot. I started off by saying there were many different parties that were influential in this, but I do want to point out, on the Wednesday I spoke with the Prime Minister and said you have to have the back of the people of Windsor, Essex, because this vehicle is built here. Thursday, I spoke with Lloyd Longfield, who is the chair of the audit committee, and told him the same thing. That was the day that the Windsor Assembly Plan indicated that they were going to be cutting the third shift. And yes, Friday morning, Napty Baines flew down and announced that Chrysler Pacifica was attracting the green energy rebate. That is something, that green energy rebate, the focus on electric vehicles, the focus on innovation in manufacturing is what we need to move ahead. The whole global economy is moving forward. We have to move with it.
Okay, I'm gonna stop this one here because I know we have a lot of questions on the floor. I likely, I understand that candidates want to keep adding things in, which I understand because it's getting a little lively up at the front, which I appreciate. I'll invite somebody else to come up and ask a question, please.
Hi, my name's Ava. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Essex. So I have an issue that I would like all the parties to address. Their stance on university loans for kids who don't qualify for OSAP. I come from a middle-class family. I have 3 sisters, and my parents make too much money according to our current government, so I don't qualify for an OSAP loan. With having 4 kids and the other bills, my parents don't have the extra disposable income to pay for my university, nor my sisters. Because I don't qualify for OSAP, I'm forced to go to a bank and get a loan with a high interest rate and immediate payback. I think there should be a universal loan program, student loan program, for anyone wishing to go to post-secondary institutions regardless of their parents' income. This should be a lower interest loan with payback after the student graduates. I like our country's education system and the programs we have, but I'm being penalized because of what my parents make. I want to be a doctor, but unfortunately, because I don't qualify for OSAP, I'm going to graduate crippled with debt and not be able to pay off my student loan for a long time after I've graduated. So ultimately, my question is, what are you going to do about this for me and other students like me?
That is a great question, Ava. Thank you for that. And it's one, I feel your pain. I mean, I also had to go through school with student loans and debts, and I was fortunate enough that I was able to qualify for OSAP. And that is one of the things that the government is recognizing. Colleges, universities, trade schools, they help prepare our Canadian students for well-paying jobs, and higher continuing education is also the way to get ahead. But it is becoming harder and harder today. The cost of tuition is rising faster than students can keep up with. We are looking at more generous Canada student grants because the cost of going to school is increasing and you have to take on more debt in order to fund your education. So the Liberal government did in 2016 increase the Canada student grants. That's the money that you don't have to pay back by 50%. And we expanded the program to make it more available to including part-time students. So I would definitely want an opportunity to chat with you just a little bit more on a one-on-one basis on your very own personal situation. What we're trying to do, though, is give students more money in order to go back to school. A re-elected Liberal government will make even more new investments in students, helping them spend more time to focus on classes and not to have to worry so much about how to pay for school. We're looking at increasing Canada student grants by up to $1,200 more per year. That's 40% to help with the rising cost of tuition, books, rent, and so forth. We're also looking to boost it as of next year to $4,200. That will be the maximum grant that a student could get. But loans are also going to be more flexible because the opportunities that students need to, the opportunities that are there for students are dependent, obviously, to a certain extent on being able to access loans.
Okay, Audrey, I have to move on to the next candidate here. Sure.
Thank you, Ava, and I'm so sorry that this is the situation you're facing. This should never be the case. To see you know, a young person who wants to study hard and dedicate themselves, and we have a shortage of doctors. We need this in our community, and we need people to be able to be educated and not worried about how they're going to pay it. We need to move to a system where kids are covered from ECE all the way through to graduating from whatever program or trade that they want to be a part of. We believe so strongly in this, and we believe that we should have a model that moves towards tuition being covered for all students. We have an example of this in our country in Quebec. It's totally possible for us to do this, and we understand, you know, that we can capture revenue and other streams that I mentioned earlier to be able to put those funds to good use. And I want to tell you that last year the Liberal government made $3 billion off the backs of students in interest payments alone. They forgave $6 billion in corporate debt, in corporate loans. That's wrong. I and the New Democrats want to see that money go towards you and your future and your education. We would immediately move to ending interest on all student loans, and we would move and transition into a grant-only system. We do not want students to be walking around with this backpack of debt for the rest of their lives when they're trying to be good citizens, have a contribution to our community, and in sectors certainly that we need. So we're deeply committed to doing this, and we know that we can, and it's about making choices and decisions for young people and for our communities, quite honestly. We need people in all of these sectors to go and pursue this education, and we have a plan to do that.
Thank you.
So the Green Party, for a length of time now, has wanted to make it possible for everyone to be able to go to school, post-secondary school, without any cost, which can entirely be done just based on restructuring the whole system. We are paying so much in paying off defaulted student loans, paying for grant and bursary programs, and really just administering the whole OSAP system. So we would like to make it so that tuition is not a problem. So tuition is paid for, depending on what you want to go into, that there's room in every faculty, that there's room for students to go. If you've got the grades, you've got the determination, your school should be paid for. This is really important. This is something that works very well in Europe in many ways, is having an education system for post-secondary school that is not something that students or their parents have to fund. Being the youngest person up here, I still have OSAP to pay for, and I still have probably about a year to pay for it. It's very unfortunate that you go to school and you try your best, you work hard, and you're still indebted over it. So I would love to see a Canada where no one is paying tuition and everyone is able to work hard, be trained and educated for the job they deserve, which then just comes back, trickles right back into the economy. It's not fair that anyone like yourself, Ava, or anyone else sitting here should have to be turned away from university because they can't afford it or they can't get the loan for it. It's just not fair. We live in a prosperous society where everyone should be able to educate themselves and live happily and do the career that they would like to do, providing they're willing to work for it. There should be nothing financially stopping you from doing that. Thank you. Bill?
Thank you, Ava, for wishing to be a doctor. We need more doctors, we all know that. It's a tough course to handle as well. Congratulations on your interest. There's no question that high-demand jobs, such as doctors, should have greater latitude for grants for people to attain that. At the same time, we should be taking the restrictions off of qualified doctors that currently limit their ability to earn a higher incomes than what we allow them to do now. A lot of our doctors are working part-time hours because they're limited to what they can earn. There's no reason to do that. If you wish to work more hours and earn more money to apply to a student loan that you may have had, that should be your prerogative to do as a fully fledged doctor. Currently, that system doesn't exist. Doctors are limited to what they can earn. Therefore, they limit their hours of service. That's not right. The free market system, doctor should earn what he's capable of earning in a legitimate business like that.
Okay, so I'm gonna, I have quite a few follow-ups I would add to that, but I think in the interest of time, if we want to circle back, if anybody want to circle back and add anything at the end, we're going to move to the next question. And I think at this time too, just to make sure that everybody else has the opportunity, we're going to flip as well. We're going to start, Bill, you're going to start this time, and we're going to work our way to the other side of the table, okay?
Hello, my name is Cameron. I'm 15 years old. I'm from Essex. I would like to say I'm very concerned that the mandatory online learning is not beneficial to students and is going to prove difficult for those already struggling. As a candidate, what is your position on online learning?
I have no experience with it, but I don't see how it can function with online learning when rural areas of the county don't even have adequate internet to satisfy the demand. Obviously, it can't function. Therefore, how can it function if you don't have internet? That, for example, I have fantastic internet at home. I lived in Colchester on the other shore for years. The internet there would not support the programs that you have. You'd be in the middle of doing something and it would bounce you out, all kinds of frustration, and you've paid your money for the course. When you're bounced out, you no longer have access to get back into that exam and you get an automatic failing grade. It's not correct, it's not right. I don't think, I can understand the concept, and I think the concept is probably very good, but without the infrastructure to support what the program is, it can't function.
I'm just going to interrupt before we go to you, Jen. Cameron, I'm just wondering if you're talking specifically about those online programs that are now being instated in high schools and in elementary schools. Okay, so I just want that to be something for the candidates to keep in mind, because I know we could likely get into a broadband and an internet discussion right now, but more so focused on the education system. What I would say too is this is primarily because the province is the one that is dealing with that issue at the moment. I'm not sure, I think the candidates may be able to answer a little bit quickly on this issue, but may be able to take this conversation with you offside, but I will let them add to it with what they can.
So in terms of online learning, I've actually done online learning myself on a university perspective as well as college courses. Doing university courses online was very difficult because you're in there could be 300 people in your class and you're not given an individualized approach at all. Everything's just kind of posted, you have to do the work, there wouldn't be like a live lecture or anything like that, so it's very difficult, and I imagine it would be that way in high school as well. Going back to school after I finished my degree, going back a year later and doing HR courses through an online learning platform, I found I did very well in that. It was very individualized, it was a good approach. So I think online learning could be beneficial if it was done in a way that engaged the participants in the class, engaged students, so that they were given all the information and they had that sort of classroom environment in an online setting. Unfortunately, I know the way it's structured in many ways is just, here's the work, here's what you need to read, here's your questions, answer your questions, write a paper on this topic, and that isn't a very good approach. It needs to be done in a more interactive format, but again, being with the provincial legislation, we wouldn't have much control over that on a national level. However, I agree that more money should be put into education on a provincial level, and that's part of the Green Platform in many ways.
Thank you so much for the question. And my sons attended Bell River High School, and last year my son came home to me, my youngest, and he said, "Mom, I'm going to go out tomorrow, I'm going to walk out with the teachers." And I said, well, why? I said, you know, we talk a lot of politics in our home, obviously. But I said to him, why are you walking out? Because I didn't want to hear that it was just to go and hang out with his friends at Tim Hortons. And he said, Mom, I'm walking out because they're going to force us to do online learning, and they're going to increase our class sizes, and that's going to hurt a lot of kids. That means that kids who need extra help aren't going to be able to get it, and kids who are trying to achieve a higher mark so they can get into their post-secondary aren't going to get the extra help either. He said, I really disagree with this. So I hear from a lot of young people how concerned they are, and this is a conservative PC Doug Ford cut. And on the eve right now of education workers going on strike in our region, you know, we really are facing a crisis and attacks that are happening on our education system. For me, it's about getting the supports that you need to be able to get the education you need, and that doesn't mean increasing class sizes or forcing students to learn in a way that isn't conducive to their best learning ability. And I also believe that school's about more than just learning. School's about the social aspect. It's about being part of a community. It's about so many things that, you know, you can't achieve sitting at home in front of a computer. So, you know, I strongly am against these rollbacks and cuts and ideas that the Conservatives have provincially, and I'm deeply worried about what they would do federally to back up these types of cuts that are happening in our province.
Absolutely agree. There is a place for online learning, as Jennifer pointed out, and that may be in the post-secondary education stream. But certainly when you're in high school, you're, as Tracey said, there are many more reasons why you need to stay in the classroom. Teachers have a lot to offer, whether it's in guidance, whether it's in answering questions, and it's those various supports that students require in order to achieve in that particular course. Online learning, as Bill pointed out, in our infrastructure challenged, broadband infrastructure challenged area, is really not a realistic option for those of us in rural areas. And schools do create many more opportunities than just book learning. They are places that provide cultural experiences. They're places for young people to experience diversity and experience athletics and culture and so many other things. And those are not things that can be learned online either. So, and
I'm gonna stop you there, Audrey. I have to. I know I keep having to interrupt, but I do want to make sure that we get through a couple more questions.
Cole Foster, 10 years old, from Essex. So the Liberal government is challenging the human rights decisions to compensate the residential school survivors. Our government was responsible for what happened to them. So, as Canadians, how can we justify that?
Bill?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're starting on your end, sorry.
I apologize, guys. There is no way to justify it. There's no way to justify the actions that occurred in the first place. The Indigenous people have suffered greatly from the residential schools, and I believe we're just beginning to understand more and more of the depth of the damage that was done. So no, there is no excuse for the actions that took place. But we as citizens are responsible for the governments that we live under. So that's part of our responsibility as citizens is to take care of the problem as they preferably as they happen, let alone after the fact historically. So to answer your question, there is no excuse. It can't be undone either.
In terms of Indigenous policy, the Green Party, we have such a strong policy which is based off of Indigenous people writing much this policy for us. We've consulted with many Indigenous leaders in many different communities who've been affected by previous parties' treatment of them. So really it's coming back to assist those who were victims of the residential schools, also victims of current situations where people on reserves don't have fresh water, potable water to drink, where people don't have proper nutrition, people have terrible, unsafe living conditions in general. So through this, we would like to support Indigenous people so that they not only have a safe place to live, but they have opportunity for the future. So if you take a look at the policy, we have a huge chunk actually on Indigenous people and so many things we'd like to do to help them out in the future and present. It's very important to us as Canadians. Thanks for your question.
I just want to point out too, candidates are doing a great job keeping responses under a minute. If we can continue to do that, we'll get to the most questions possible.
Thank you, Cole, and thank you for caring about Indigenous people in our country and what they're being faced with. So they've been sued successively by Conservatives and now by Liberals who are appealing a decision that was made to provide some funding to folks who've been impacted. Most Canadians find this abhorrent. They cannot believe that a government is going to fight against a court decision to remedy some of the most shameful parts of our history. And it's inconceivable to me. I saw the Minister of Indigenous Affairs on the news the other day, and he had no answer. He had no answer. He said, you know, that it's a timing thing, there's some loopholes. That's not an answer. The $60,000 that's going to be awarded to these people should not be challenged by any government, and we should not be having a federal government spend our public tax dollars to further victimize people in court who are trying to find peace and reconciliation in their lives. It's completely unacceptable. And lastly, I'll add that Romeo Saganash, one of my colleagues, an MP in the NDP, introduced legislation trying to uphold the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and to apply that here in Canada. And unfortunately, Conservatives held that up in the Senate, and it did not pass. This, again, is a shameful thing that's happening in our country. If we're serious about truth and reconciliation, then we have to start applying policies, not just saying nice things.
So in 1 minute, Liberals have made great strides in the last 4 years in reconciling with our First Nations people. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Task Force went ahead. We've dealt with boil water advisory. We recognize and have apologized for many of the colonialist actions of many years ago. We moved forward following Jordan's principle and dealt with those situations with young children. We are living up to the spirit and intent of treaties and agreements and other arrangements that have been made with our First Nations people. I have a brother-in-law who is living up in the Edmonton area.
I don't want to interrupt, but I think Cole's question is, why are you suing these people? That's the question. Why is the Liberal government continuing this case, and why are they appealing and suing Indigenous people? That's the question.
Yeah.
I don't have a black and white answer on that today. I am not, but I am very proud of the strides that the Liberal government has made with our First Nations people. We have worked with them on moving forward, on apologies, making arrangements. We have 2 ministers who are working with First Nations people
We're suing them.
in trying to reach arrangements and working things out. There are, as I say, we are working with all the situations as best we can, and I am not the Minister of Veterans of Indigenous First Nations people. So I can't answer that question. I personally think that we should reach resolution because the quicker you can achieve a resolution without going through the courts, the easier it is on Canadian taxpayers.
Okay. On this issue, I am gonna move forward. If you do want to ask any questions of the candidates afterwards, please follow up. Okay. I'm gonna go forward here. I think Emily may have a question.
I'm Emily. I'm 16 years old and I'm from Lakeshore. I want to thank you all for listening to youth voices. It's really important. And I just wanted to sort of introduce something to the discussion that we haven't heard about too much, which is environmental policy. We've talked a lot about the economy, which is of course very important, but I think something else that many would see as equally important is how we treat the environment and how we're going to move forward with that. I think that's a really big issue for youth today, seeing as we're going to be dealing with a lot of problems that other generations have never seen before. So I'd like to know firstly what your party is going to be doing to help advance some environmental policy, how they will be addressing issues such as climate change, and how you individually would bring forth issues within our local environment to the government and make sure that things like the lack of forested area here and all of our waterways, what we're facing there, how that's going to be addressed.
Thank you, Emily. Excellent question. Our party is based on the environment is critical. The discussions that we've had in the media and so forth regarding climate and the alarmism that's contained within that climate emergency concept, we don't agree with that climate emergency concept. We agree the climate's changing, it will always change, and it always has. Now, the greater environment is a different issue. That greater issue is something we should be and can make noticeable gains and measurable gains continuously from now till forever, realistically.
Bill, can you give an example of some of those continuous gains?
Well, as she said, tree cover alone is huge for eliminating carbon problems alone. Better farming strategies is a carbon sink. There's all kinds of actions there. We need to debate where we're going with our green policies regarding toxic waste. Solar panels alone are going to create a huge heavy metal problem. We spread solar panels all over the world here and all over our footprint. We have huge greenhouses and solar areas currently. And those solar panels are full of cadmium and other heavy metals that are extremely difficult to recycle. We don't have the capacity or the ability to recycle them. And as the different generations of the solar panels, for example, take place, we no longer even know what's actually contained within them. So oftentimes we need to just take a breath, step back, and be very conscious of what we're doing, as you said, to not create further environmental problems, trying to deal with the energy solution of today.
Thank you, Jen.
So the Green Party Foundation is based on the environment, always been our driving force, and by helping the environment, we can help people and the country in so many other facets. One thing being moving just to a fully green energy system. Right now, Canada sources about 60% of its energy from non-greenhouse emitting sources. We can certainly move to 100%, and that's not just solar panels. We have turbines. We have the way to harness more of our water energy through hydro energy. We have the ability to use geothermal, which is huge. There's so many ways we can harness the environment to provide us with energy without harming the environment in any way. Not just through climate change, but through so many ways we need to be more sustainable. Agriculture in many ways, just being more sustainable as people here. Consumerism is a huge issue in our Western world. We live in a world where something's broken, let's not fix it, let's just toss it away. Or, it'd be nice to have some new shoes. I already have 50 pairs of shoes, but, we have this consumerism approach. So really helping the environment, there's so much more we can do as people. But through the green economy, through energy conservation, as well as moving to green energy sources, is so very helpful in helping our environment. We also have a crisis here of fresh water pollution. Many of our lakes were closed for much of the summer season. so we couldn't go to the beaches. So it was very unfortunate to be like thinking as a family to go to the beach, but the beach was closed. You know, Colchester being closed, many of the beaches along Lake Erie, Bell River Beach being closed often. So there's so much more that needs to be done for our freshwater as well, making sure that corporations are held accountable for what they're dumping into the lakes, that water's treated properly, that plastics are managed in a way that we're not polluting our lakes and oceans. So I don't think there's any party that can come up here and say that they have a more comprehensive plan for the environment than the Green Party. So we definitely have some good ideas, and I'd love to discuss more of that with you. Thanks for asking that question.
Thank you so much. We also have a very bold and ambitious climate plan. It's called Power to Change, and we're quite proud of it. And I would say the difference, there are a lot of similarities, like Jennifer said, in our plans. Ours has a focus on working people as well as respecting Indigenous people, so those are the key differences. So I'm just going to read a laundry list, which isn't something I typically do, but I think it will help you to understand our policy. So the first thing we need to do is declare a climate emergency. And then we need to put into law science-based greenhouse gas reduction targets to help stabilize the global temperature rise to below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We would remain in firm opposition to the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We've made that clear. We'd fix the broken environmental assessment process to give communities a stronger voice in energy decisions and provide core funding to support Indigenous communities' participation. We would ensure that proposed projects align with our emissions reduction targets. We would end fossil fuel subsidies. We should not be putting public dollars into subsidizing a sector that we know we have to transition away from. We would put a fair price on carbon. We create an independent climate accountability office, and this is key, because if we implement policies, we need to know how effective they are. We need to know if they're working. We need to reflect on them and shift and change with them. It can't be that we just say, okay, here's the approach and walk away from it and hope for the best. We need to ensure that what we're doing is working. We also would create a Canadian Climate Bank. This is to boost investment in renewable energy, like Jennifer mentioned, about the opportunities that we're seeing globally that Canada is not capturing. We're talking about 300,000 jobs that we could create. And when you ask locally what I'm doing, I created a bill calling for a national freshwater strategy. We're surrounded by fresh water. It is called the new, the new oil, if you will. It's going to be the next big item that we have to face, and looking at scarcity of water, looking at the impact of invasive species in our Great Lakes here, talking about algal blooms, talking to farmers, talking to everyone who is a part of that, talking to folks who are in the tourism industry. And certainly I sat in this very same hall with IRCA recently talking about flooding. And this hall was packed with people. There is no one in that room who doesn't believe that this is because of climate change. And IRCA is telling us that this year is not a one-off. This is going to be something going forward that we're going to experience year after year. So we have a very comprehensive plan that really, I think, respects our Paris commitments, and that's something we need to do. We were greatly disappointed to see the Liberals do very little, and in fact adopt the very low targets that existed and the weak targets under Stephen Harper's government. The climate plan that the Liberals presented is the exact same as the Conservatives, and we know that's not going to take us where we need to go.
Thank you. The Liberals have impacted climate change on at least 50 different fronts in the 4 years that they were in government. As you know, we put a price on carbon pollution. It's no longer free to pollute anywhere in Canada. We put a price on pollution that'll lead to a healthier environment, but what it also does, we put a rebate money back in the pockets of Canadians. And we know that putting a price on pollution is the most efficient way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We've seen it in British Columbia. It's worked, and it's worked in other countries. We also instated a climate action fund. We phased out coal. We have worked with our Indigenous partners who have, I don't want to go through a shopping list either, but we did 50 different aspects on climate change. We also invested $8.95 million over 4 years to support 36 projects under the Great Lakes Protection Initiative. And it is important because we do have the Great Lakes surrounding us. Restoring areas of concern, preventing toxic algae, reducing releases of harmful chemicals, engaging the public through citizen science, and also engaging Indigenous peoples. We took action on plastic and microbeads. We are also looking forward to, in the next 4 years, planting 2 billion trees. We want to launch an ambitious program that will plant those trees. It's actually over 10 years, and it's part of a $3 billion plan to use the power of nature to help fight climate change. What that'll do is it'll create 3,500 seasonal jobs per year in tree planting. And so that will be a good thing for students. We'll also help communities create urban and regional forest plans, and we'll set aside funds to support nonprofits and private landowners and farmers in dealing with climate change. We're also seeing the effects, and we know that climate change impacts local communities. We're setting up a new EI fund specifically to deal with disaster flooding. So again, there are a whole host of programs that we're looking to help Canadians deal with climate change and encourage changes in behavior. We're investing in innovation and technology because we know that the green energy is the best way to move our planet forward. I have 2 young kids, they're 30 and 27. They told me, Mom, I don't know that we're even going to have any kids because we are so worried about our planet, and is there going to be a planet for them? So absolutely committed 100% to ensuring that we do everything we can to move climate change forward.
Okay, so at this point I have to make the announcement because it is already 5:30, so we've gotten quite, we've taken up quite a bit of time. I think what we can do, I do have some cue cards, so if there's anybody that wants to leave a question or would like to share a question, I would be happy to pass those on to the candidates and then allow them and their teams the opportunity to get back to you moving forward throughout the election. That way some of those questions can get answered leading up to the election. I do want to take the opportunity again to thank all of the candidates for coming out today and for all of you for being here and for being so engaged in your communities in the various ways that you are. If you have any questions for us, we would love to have them. And I think at this time, I think we should all just thank the candidates for being with us today. And I will just one last time, because I was neglectful in an opening. I think I will just at this point, for anybody that would like to stay for it, please do. But I'd like to give the candidates just about a minute each just to leave you with some parting thoughts.
Parting thoughts. Well, what we see, I think, our country's on the cusp of change. We need to make a decision. Are we going to stay where we are, or are we going to grow forward? The limiting factor for us in a general sense is affordability and vision. Regardless of how you feel on the climate emergency, and I can say that I don't believe in a climate emergency. I do believe it's very critical that we deal with the environment issues, and there's a lot of opportunity to do so. Flooding has been an export business for Holland, for example. The technologies they have to avoid flooding like we've had here, they're making a fortune on it. So there's nothing we can't accomplish if we set the goal. It's just to remember, it's imperative to resolve our programs and our broken systems. Transferring the cost of change to our future generations is not a solution. That's all we need to keep in mind. Thank you.
So thank you so much for having me here. It's great to see youth with some really good questions. It's great to see people involved at such a young age. I, as a person here, am very engaged in the public, very involved in the community, and I'd love to see more Green Party representatives elected. Obviously, we're still making ground, we're still making headway. We don't expect to have a huge amount of seats yet, but to get some more seats that would help so many Canadians, being that we love to work with other parties. That's something the Green Party's realized. If you can't work as a government with many different viewpoints, then there isn't really much point of having democracy in Canada. So really just like to see more people engaged, more people interested in realizing we do have a climate emergency, and I do 100% agree with that. I'd like to see more people engaged with the fact that our economy could use some improvement. More people engaged with just many things that are facing us, young and old. So really, I'll just leave this with, take a look at what we have to offer through our policies. We're not just a one-sided party, just thinking about the environment. We have so much more tied to the environment as well. And if you'd like anything, you'd like to ask me any questions, I'd love to get some emails or feedback from you. You can email me at jennifer.alderson@greenparty.ca. You can follow me on Twitter at jalderson4Essex. Really, I just love to get some questions and love to see more involvement from all of you. Thank you so much.
We'd be happy to share all of the contact information as well on our social media pages so that you can take a look at them for yourselves. And if you don't want to share anything with us and you want to direct your questions to the candidates, we can definitely do that as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of your questions. They really were truly thoughtful, and I'm so encouraged when I see young people who are engaged on the issues that are facing us, who are paying attention politically. That always makes me feel like our future is so incredibly bright. Many of you in this room will likely go on to pursue political careers, and I look forward to seeing that happen. I want to say that I've been fighting very hard for Essex and working very hard. My team, both here locally, helping people with casework and issues that they have, and then influencing policy in Ottawa and working on important issues to our community as a whole. I've been a very strong voice for us and commit to continue to being that when re-elected. So I know that many of you in the room expressed that you're not of voting age yet. But your parents, I see parents and grandparents here with you and folks who can vote. So I really encourage you to have those conversations over Thanksgiving dinner and talk about politics with your family. I was raised in an environment where my parents said, don't talk about politics at the table. And I'm happy to say that I've transitioned away from that fully and always bring it up at the table, because every single thing in our life is impacted by political decisions. And it's so important that you realize that at a young age and that you're able to engage with your municipal, your provincial, and your federal representatives to be able to drive that change. So continue the great work that you're all doing. Thank you for your questions, and thank you so much for staying with us for the whole time.
I just want to add one more thing before I forget. So we, as a party, would like to move the voting age to 16. I believe the NDP has the same belief. This is something that we feel is important, being that you're old enough to drive a car, you're old enough to work and pay taxes, why can't you vote? So that's also another thing to consider when thinking about the election and talking with your family as well.
And I would add to that, yeah, that is part of our party policy, but I would also say that I think that if we had a younger voting age, we would have people educating themselves more at a younger age and possibly increase voter turnout. Our voter turnout in Essex is not where it needs to be. We need to make every effort to ensure that people are able to vote. And if you start at a younger age, the likelihood of you following that through in your life is even greater. So I agree with that.
So I too want to thank you all for attending today, because it does show that you are active and engaged and thinking about your future. Sorry. As a first-generation Canadian, we too sat around the dining room table and talked about what a privilege it is to live in Canada. We won the lottery to be in Canada, and how important it is to exercise your right to vote. I'm very proud of our Liberal platform. It's an 85-page document, fully costed by the Independent Parliamentary Budget Officer, and it's all outlined there. And you can find that at www.liberal.ca. It's a very family-friendly platform, from youth to seniors. There's something there for everyone. What I forgot to or didn't mention to Ava was one of the things with student loans is that the Liberals are proposing that there's no need to repay student loan debt until you make at least $35,000 a year. There's a 2-year grace period, no interest and no repayment required. And if you should happen to move forward with raising a family while you still have student loans, there will be no interest and no repayment required until your child's 5th birthday, so your youngest child's 5th birthday. So again, trying to make things much more affordable for Canadians and Canadian youth. But we have a whole lot more to offer. We're looking at net zero emissions by 2050, and we want Canada to be a world leader in clean tech. We're looking, and you know that the Canada Child Benefit has, and we didn't really get a chance to talk about that today when we talked about the economy, but what it's done is it's raised over 21,000 families in the Essex riding alone by providing monthly money for families. Again, it looks like from the parliamentary budget officer, it appears that most Canadians who receive some of these funds are $2,000 further ahead than they were in 2015. The Liberal government is making business more competitive. We're supporting women entrepreneurs. We're increasing innovation in our agri-food industry and in our automotive sector, in infrastructure, and we're investing in training for workers to improve their skills. We've raised taxes on the wealthiest 1%, and we've invested in tax cuts that benefit middle-class Canadians. We've reopened our local Veterans Affairs office, and we've lowered the age to collect old age security. As I said before, we put a price on pollution while offering green energy rebates to everyday Canadians. I'm very proud of that, and I look forward to your vote on October 21st. Please vote Liberal.
Well, that ends it for this part of the panel. I want to thank everybody else. Again, I can't, thank you all enough for being here. And for all of you that are here, as we have mentioned as well, we've been live streaming bits and pieces on Instagram and Facebook. You can follow us at the Youth Council Coalition of Canada on Facebook and YCC_Canada on Instagram. Please share anything that you can with your friends. I'm looking forward to hearing, I think, from some of you that I know all of the interesting conversations that are likely to transpire before the election and everything that happens in between and thereafter. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you for being here.